Power rarely collapses loudly. It leaks quietly, vote by vote. For years, Donald Trump ruled his party through fear, loyalty, and muscle memory. He spoke, Republicans followed, or so we were told. But this week, something cracked. Not a rebellion, not a revolt, a hesitation. 17 House Republicans broke ranks. 5 Senate Republicans crossed a line Trump thought was sacred. On healthcare, on war, on authority itself, these were not random acts. They were signals. Because when lawmakers stop obeying automatically, power changes shape. And when fear weakens, even slightly, systems begin to shift. Trump is still president, still loud, still dangerous, but absolute control doesn't fade all at once. It erodes. If you want to understand where American politics is actually heading, not the headlines, but the mechanics, you're in the right place. Stay with me. Because to understand this moment, we have to name the problem it exposes. Let's be precise about what we're looking at. This is not about policy wins or losses. It's about control. And the slow weakening of it. The dominant assumption in Washington has been simple. Trump commands the Republican Party, not persuades, on commands. Lawmakers comply because defiance is punished. Primaries, attacks, exile. That system worked for years. It created discipline and silence. But what happened this week challenges that model. Not because Trump lost votes. Presidents lose votes all the time. What matters is who defected and why. Republicans didn't break ranks to oppose Trump personally. They did it to protect themselves. Their voters, their futures on healthcare concern crossed party lines. On military power, constitutional anxiety resurfaced. These votes revealed something deeper than disagreement. They revealed calculation. When loyalty becomes optional, even briefly, authority weakens. And once lawmakers start choosing survival over submission, the balance shifts. To understand why this is happening now, we have to step back. Because this moment didn't begin this week. To see why this is happening now, we have to widen the lens. Trump's dominance didn't emerge by accident. It grew inside a specific moment. A party shaped by fear of its own voters. A media ecosystem that rewarded loyalty and punished doubt. An era where opposition inside the party felt suicidal. For years, Republican lawmakers learned a lesson. Defy Trump and your career ends. So they adapted. They stayed quiet. They voted yes. They survived. But political power is never static. It depends on incentives. And incentives change. We are entering an election year. Careers are suddenly fragile. Margins are thin. Voters are restless. At the same time, Trump's presidency has moved from shock to routine, from disruption to burden. What once energized now exhausts. That matters because when a leader stops looking inevitable, loyalty becomes negotiable. Lawmakers begin to ask a different question. Not what does Trump want, but what do I need to survive? This shift doesn't announce itself loudly. It appears in procedural votes, in symbolic acts, in moments of quiet defiance, and then suddenly a system built on fear starts to bend. That bending produced a crisis. The first rupture came quietly, but its implications were not small. In the House, something unexpected happened. A procedural move, a discharge petition, usually ignored, usually doomed. This one wasn't. 17 Republicans crossed the aisle, not under pressure from Trump, not with his blessing, against his wishes. The issue was healthcare. Insurance subsidies, benefits that millions rely on, benefits Republicans allowed to expire. This vote wasn't ideological. It was practical. Lawmakers saw the backlash coming. They acted before it arrived. That's the key. When members of the president's own party revive democratic legislation, it signals anxiety, not rebellion. Fear of voters, not fear of Trump. The bill passed, bipartisan, public, and possible to ignore. And suddenly the myth cracked, because once defiance becomes visible, it becomes contagious. If this kind of moment feels small, pay attention. These are the signals history leaves behind. And this was only the first warning, because a far more dramatic test was coming. The deeper story isn't about these votes themselves. It's about the system underneath them. Trump's power has never rested on persuasion. It rested on deterrence, on the belief that crossing him would be fatal. That belief created discipline, but it also created dependency. Lawmakers outsourced judgment to survival instincts. What changed is not Trump's personality, it's the math. Symbolic votes carry low immediate cost. They allow lawmakers to signal independence without triggering full retaliation. And once a few take that step, others reassess the risk. This is how power erodes, not through mass revolt, but through incremental permission. Healthcare votes test electoral safety. War powers votes test constitutional conscience. Together, they test the limits of fear. Trump reacted instantly, publicly, angrily, by threatening political extinction. That reaction matters, because it confirms what lawmakers already sense. That control now requires force, not inevitability. When authority must be enforced, it is already weakening. And when enforcement becomes public, the illusion collapses faster. That illusion was about to face a second shock, a sharper one. In the Senate vote was different, sharper, more dangerous. This wasn't about domestic policy. It was about war. And who has the right to authorize it? A war powers resolution advanced. Narrowly, 52 to 47, 5 Republicans joined Democrats, not by accident, by choice. The message was clear. Military action in Venezuela without congressional approval crossed a line. This was rare, bipartisan. Symbolic but explosive, the resolution may never become law. It may be ignored. It may be vetoed. That's not the point. The point is that Republican senators publicly challenged Trump on the use of force, on constitutional authority, on presidential overreach. That kind of defiance used to be unthinkable. Trump understood the danger immediately. He lashed out, named names, demanded political punishment. That response revealed more than the vote itself, because leaders confident in control don't panic. They don't threaten. They don't overreact. This moment exposed insecurity, and insecurity spreads. When senators defy a president on war, the stakes change, and the consequences move closer to home. Now bring this down from Capitol Hill to where it actually lands. With you, because these votes are not abstractions. They shape real lives. Real costs, real risks. Healthcare subsidies aren't numbers on a spreadsheet. They decide whether families stay insured, whether premiums explode, whether a missed paycheck becomes a crisis. When Republicans broke ranks, they weren't suddenly progressive. They were listening to voters calling offices, to anxiety at town halls, to fear that Washington had gone too far. And on war, the stakes are even heavier. Military action is not symbolic. It means lives, American lives, and lives abroad. You may not follow congressional procedure. Most people don't, but you feel the consequences. Higher costs, greater instability, endless conflict without accountability. That's why these moments matter. They are lawmakers sensing your limits and acting before you push back harder. If you've ever felt politics was distant, rigged, untouchable, this is the counterexample. Pressure works. Attention matters. If this perspective helps you see your role more clearly, share it. Talk about it. Stay engaged. Because what starts with voters doesn't stop at borders. The ripple effects are global. What happens in Washington never stays in Washington. Power travels. signals travel faster. When America's president loses unquestioned control of his own party, allies notice. Adversaries notice first. On healthcare, instability signals dysfunction. A system unable to protect its own citizens looks weaker abroad, less predictable, less reliable. On war, the signal is sharper. Congress pushing back tells the world the White House is constrained, that military decisions are contested. That escalation is no longer automatic. For allies, this creates hesitation. Who speaks for America? Who decides? For rivals, it creates opportunity. Uncertainty invites testing, pressure, provocation. The Venezuela vote mattered beyond Venezuela. It showed that unilateral action has limits again, that the post 9/11 blank check is fraying. This is how global power shifts. Not with treaties, with hesitation. A divided governing party projects a divided state, and division changes calculations in capitals far from Washington. The United States is still powerful, but power without coherence is fragile. And fragility forces a question no system can avoid forever. What comes next? So where does this lead? There are three paths ahead. None are abstract. All are plausible. The first is recovery. Trump reasserts discipline. Pressure intensifies. Defections become rare again. Fear works one more time. In this scenario, the party closes ranks. Symbolic rebellions fade. Control stabilizes, at least until the election passes. The second path is drift. More symbolic votes, more quiet distance, no open revolt, just erosion. Power becomes conditional. Lawmakers cooperate when safe. They defect when necessary. Authority survives, but weaker, unpredictable, transactional. This is the most likely outcome. The third path is fracture. A red line is crossed. Another war vote, another veto clash, another public threat. And suddenly, defiance is no longer isolated. It becomes coordinated, normalized, impossible to punish all at once. That scenario doesn't require courage, only math and timing. History tells us systems rarely collapse from opposition. They unravel from incentives, and the incentives are shifting, which brings us to the final question. Not about Trump, but about power itself. Power does not disappear. It relocates. What we witnessed this week was not the fall of a president. It was the movement of leverage away from certainty toward calculation. Trump still shouts, still threatens, still dominates headlines. But real power is quieter. It lives in votes, in hesitation, in moments when people stop asking for permission. That is the insight. Presidents don't lose authority when they are opposed. They lose it when obedience becomes optional. We are entering a phase where loyalty has a price, and some Republicans are no longer willing to pay it blindly. This doesn't guarantee reform. It doesn't promise restraint. But it does reopen something fundamental: choice. And choice is where accountability begins. If you want to understand politics beyond slogans, beyond personalities, this is where you look at systems under stress, at fear losing efficiency, at power learning its limits. If this analysis helped you see that more clearly, don't stop here. Share it. Stay with the series. Because the next chapter isn't about Trump. It's about what replaces dominance when dominance no longer works.